Hey everybody, welcome back. David Eon and the lovely Miss Lady Pop Hunter here, having a discussion about A Christmas Carol, the Charles Dickens classic. And we have gone through and we've been watching a bunch of different renditions of A Christmas Carol or Scrooge related, as it is the quote holiday season. And there are a lot of them, and we didn't even probably scratch the surface on how many of these films there actually are, because this is a very well-known story, and it's been hashed over about as many times as Dracula. And it's been done a lot. But we watched a bunch of different versions. Some of them are quite good. Some of them are poorly done, and some of them are more book accurate than others, and so on.
And while we were watching it, other things popped up, in our minds, and we'll go through that as we talk. Some things that, you've seen, if you've seen one, you've seen them all just about. I mean, it's the same basic concept, but some versions brought out one specific aspect more than another version, so we wanted to talk about
or had better storytelling aspect to it, or again more accurate, or might have been with a much heartier cast, just excellent performances overall, and that counts. That counts a lot.
So the first one we saw was Scrooge. That came out in 1935. That one, they showed something I don't think any other that I've seen before showed. So you had Scrooge, and then they showed the contrast between the haves and the have-nots, because I don't know if it was Parliament or some aristocrat.
Yeah, it was a party for aristocrats, and I believe the king was there. And so you went across the tracks from where they were, and there's this huge ball.
And people are dressed up, and you see all the poor people coming around just to get to see everybody go in, and then they show all of the poor people at the kitchen window.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and the cooks are passing food through the windows, like scraps through the window.
Yeah, because that people, they don't finish anything in those parties. So a taste of this, a taste of that. They got to get rid of the food, so they're like, here, and they're tossing it out to people.
And they fighting over it and everything. But I've never seen in any others, how they show the haves and the have-nots. But all in all, that one was pretty good. It wasn't that long.
And the spirit, you didn't see the spirits.
Yeah.
They did it in a way that they did not, because I guess they couldn't, or maybe they didn't have the budget for it, but they were just like, what, like for example, Marley comes in, a door opens and closes, a window opens and closes, things happen, but you don't see Marley at all. And Marley says, "Only you can see me, Ebenezer Scrooge." I guess that was for the audience's benefit, but you don't see the spirits at all in this rendition.
The next one was A Carol for Another Christmas. That came out in 1964 by Rod Serling.
Yeah, and this is one that'll, it's a very highbrow thing. I mean, it's Rod Serling we're talking about, like Twilight Zone. It's, you could miss that it's A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, because we saw it before, and I didn't realize that that's the angle they were taking. It's totally different, but you do have the spirits come in and show the guy different parts of his life, past, present, future, that kind of thing. But it wasn't, the dialogue totally different, names totally different, everything was totally different.
It just borrowed the concept.
Yeah. It was well written, but if you've seen a lot of Rod Serling written stuff, you kind of got to pay attention. You can't haphazardly watch.
Yeah, but like anything else that Rod Serling did, it's going to have brilliant dialogue, and the acting is going to be stellar.
Yeah.
The thing with this is, though, unlike being similar to any traditional Christmas Carol story with a Scrooge-type character, This one is very political.
Yeah.
It's very political and very, very left-leaning, which is, it'll throw you. Because there are things that they, quite frankly, that they talked about that I'm like, nah, I don't agree with that. And history has shown that they were wrong in their concepts. But basically, again, it's a political story. It's not a traditional like, oh, you're just a bad guy kind of story. But again, the acting and the dialogue is very well done. Very well done. It's worth checking it out just for that. And Peter Sellers is phenomenal in this too, because he does appear in it.
The one thing that got me about that movie, and I couldn't understand almost the point of it, because the guy that was playing, I guess, Scrooge, if you will, he was a dean at a college, and the ghosts were telling him, because he's heavy on war, stay out of it, it's none of our business. But the ghosts are saying, hey, it is our business, we got to help people, this and that there. And I'm thinking, well, what can this guy do? I mean, he's not the president. He can't make decisions.
But he can influence youth, which we've seen in universities and how much of a mess that can be. Yeah.
So that's where they were going. And it took a minute, but I'm like, but. So then 1983 gave you Mickey's Christmas Carol. I love that one. That's the one that I grew up on. That's the Christmas Carol I grew up on. Mickey's Christmas Carol came out every year. We watched it. I always loved it. I always got a fondness in my heart for that one. Again, when I was a kid, we watched it every year. So it's always on my list of A Christmas Carol.
Or a list of like Christmas specials to watch. Yeah. And this is back when, of course, Disney was still on top of its game. Yeah. In 1983, they were still hanging on there, and they were still putting out Magic Kingdom type stuff that made you feel like it was the Magic Kingdom, unlike today where you don't know what they're doing. But the thing that surprised me about this actually is how short it was, because don't remember it that way. Yeah. You don't, looking back, you're like, wait a minute, this is 26 minutes long? Yeah, because,
once you've seen, like all of these movies, Scrooge from 1935, that was like an hour long. Rod Serling, hour and a half. Everything was like between an hour and a half to an hour and 50 minutes. And it was filled with storytelling. But Mickey was 25 minutes, like he said, but you didn't know that as a kid, and they told you the entire story. I mean, yeah, it's a cartoon, it's for kids, so they didn't embellish too much. They didn't go too deep, but you got the basic concept of everything that was going on.
And it was fun, and it was Disney when Disney was still, like I said, actually the Magic Kingdom. Yeah. And no, it didn't seem longer because it was filled up with commercials, because remember, at 26 minutes, that leaves a 4-minute slot for commercial breaks and station identification. Yeah. We watch more ads now than we did then. Let that sink in.
Yeah. 1984 gave you A Christmas Carol by George C. Scott.
That is one of the best on the list.
Yeah,
George C. Scott, Oscar winner, George C. Scott. Of course, he won an Oscar for Patton. Patton was a really excellent actor. Yeah. And that was an excellent production with him.
One thing, watching all of the different versions, something that I realized I don't think I realized before, why Scrooge is the way he is, as a child, because they always show you as a child. Yes. He's in the school, he's in boarding school, he's dropped off by his dad because his dad hates him because the mother died in childbirth, giving birth to him. So the dad didn't want to have anything to do with him. So every year he was just left at school. He wasn't allowed to come home. So you can see the bitterness come in, the anger. And then It wasn't this version. It was another version. I can't really remember which one. When the sister came and got him from school and said, "Hey, Dad changed his mind."
I know which one that is. We'll get to it. Yeah.
But you see all that, and then he goes and works with Fezziwig, and he meets the girl, but he feels like he needs to be able to give her something. I'm poor. I don't have any money. I don't have a house to put you in. And
when he gets to that point, it's still never enough because he keeps escalating it.
And then she's like, "Look, dude, I can't wait forever. I'm letting you go."
And that version with George C. Scott does a great job of like emphasizing what a miserable beginning he had that created that generational curse in the first place, to where he got to be just so cruel. He was almost being mean to people on purpose just to stay angry.
Yeah, and you start seeing that through the different versions. You want it to feel like he's not really that way, but he's making himself that way to keep people out. Like, he built up this wall, now I got to keep the wall up by being mean and nasty to people. But all of the characters made you feel like he's not really that way. He's doing it to keep people away so he won't be disappointed, so he won't be hurt again. And like, he was hurt by his girlfriend because she left him. And then he was hurt by Dad for dropping him off, being angry with him because Mom died. And then, like we said in another version, Dad picked him up and then kicked him out again. And we'll talk about that when we get there.
George C. Scott also does some of the best work emoting with his acting of any of the Scrooge characters. He really pours his guts out.
Yeah. Then you got 1999, A Christmas Carol with Patrick Stewart.
Another one that's well acted. One of the few ones where they start before you get to his counting house, because it starts with Marley's funeral.
Yeah.
And it picks up from there. And some of the, occasionally they go back a little bit further, and that does help the story along. But they did a good job emphasizing on the misery of his upbringing also. And that's the one you were thinking of when Fran says, "Oh, Father, he's changed. You don't understand. He says you can come home." And then he's like, "Oh, wow, really? Okay, cool." And, and him and Fran have a really good relationship, obviously. And then when Dad shows up with the carriage, he was like, "No, he's only staying with us for 5 days."
Yeah, he's going, I found him an apprenticeship.
I got him a job.
Yeah.
And, he's old enough. He should be working. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
What's he going to do? What the hell is he going to do? So he got abandoned again, just when he thought, okay, you know what? I can turn a corner here. Nah. Nah, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if he had stayed with his, at home, and he had his sister and they were together, would it have softened him up? Even if he had went later on to work, just being with his sister, being with somebody, a family member that loves him and everything, how much would that have changed his character? Another thing that I liked about the Patrick Stewart one that I thought was pretty good, when we are in the Christmas Present, he goes to the nephew's house and they're about to leave, and then he hears them say, "Oh, let's play a game." And then he stops and asks the ghost, "Hey, they're about to play a game. Can we please go watch?
Can I go see this? Can we watch a little longer?"
And then you can see the light come to his face, and then they went in there, and he's watching so intently. He's like, "Oh, that guy's cheating."
Yeah, that's right.
He was really getting into the game, as a ghost or whatever.
As a spectator,
a spectator. And I thought that was good. And they always show, well, not always, but in a couple of versions, they show the girlfriend and the family he has. And he's like, "Oh, that could have been my family."
Yeah. And this is
That's sad.
this is another one where Patrick Stewart again, classic actor, and he's done Scrooge on stage as a like Broadway type productions. So that's a character he's very familiar with. It's kind of like The King and I.
Yeah.
Who could do it better than Yul Brynner? He had already done it on stage like 3,000 times. So let's hire Yul Brynner, and it's that kind of situation with Patrick Stewart where he knows the character backwards. And his performance is really well done, and he's the only Scrooge that doesn't have a comb over.
Yeah, and I noticed that today watching it. Every version of Scrooge.
Well, no,
not George C. Scott though. I don't know. His hair is kind of messy. Their hair is always wild all over the place. Everybody usually have a comb over.
And he's one of the few that's well dressed. Because a lot of them look raggedy.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't even know they were wealthy, but except for with a couple of exceptions, and that's one of them where he's dressed pretty well most of the time.
Yeah, that's something else I wanted to point out. Like in the 1935, the 1971. I mean, they show you the house.
Excuse me.
The house is dirty, cobwebs everywhere.
Yeah, it's just filthy.
And they just look ragged and unkept. But George C. Scott, Patrick Stewart,
you knew they had money.
Yeah, they dressed well. They carried themselves well. The house was clean. One of them had a maid. Where they showed the maid.
Every once in a while there's a maid.
Yeah,
which explains it a lot better when you get to the point where they're at the pawnbroker.
Yeah.
And he was like, you got his bed curtains and the rings are still on it. And because that was the maid stole it. So but without that, you don't always make that connection.
Yeah, you're like, how did she get that stuff?
How did she get that stuff?
Yeah.
And also, I think the Patrick Stewart one is the only one that positively identifies a timeline.
Yeah.
Because usually sometimes they mess it up and they tell you at 1 o'clock, at 2 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, which is not correct. Because if you read the book, because then when he looks out the window and he says they did it all in one night, you're like, yeah, obviously, but no, that's not correct, not according to the story. In this one, he says 1 o'clock tonight, first one, tomorrow night at 2, the night after that.
Yeah, at 3.
Or sometimes they say the first one will come tonight at 1 and then they leave it at that. But sometimes they screw it up in some of these and say 1, 2, 3 o'clock, and then when he says, oh, they did it all in one night, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you wonder, what do you mean?
But in the Patrick Stewart one is the only one I think we saw where they positively identify the timeline.
Okay. That takes us to 2004, A Christmas Carol with Kelsey Grammer, and it's a musical.
This one is a musical.
And it's awful.
Of all the ones that we saw, and we saw more than what's on this list.
Yeah.
This is the worst version of A Christmas Carol I have ever seen. It is absolutely god-awful to the point where we shut it off before we got halfway through it.
We got up to the first ghost and we turned it off. I mean, the singing was overbearing. It was almost like the Joker movie. You remember
it was worse than that.
Yeah.
And now the problem is, if you're going to do a musical, there has to be dialogue. Okay? They sing everything. It doesn't stop. The music doesn't stop, and the music doesn't really even change. It's similar music. It's not, there's nothing that makes it stand out.
Yeah.
The music is loud. The singing is loud, which is often done when people can't sing. Well, Kelsey Grammer can, but he's not that kind of singer. You need a break. You need to have a break in it. Like if you look picking anything, for example, say Beauty and the Beast, with the Disney production, right? Dialogue. She meets the furniture, realizes the furniture's alive, and they want to calm her down and says, hey, it's okay. Be our guest, be our guest. It emphasizes something that's occurring.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell the story necessarily. But in this, they sing everything, and it doesn't stop. And if you didn't already know the story, it's so confusing with the way they do it, you wouldn't understand what was going on. It was incredibly bad.
Yeah, and then Now this one was bright. All of the other ones are kind of dismal and dark.
Yeah.
Even though it's daytime outside, it has that dark feeling.
They want you to feel dreary, at least at first.
Yeah. This one is bright. You know, and like he said, it was a lot of singing. It felt, they wanted to be comical, but it wasn't funny.
They tried to make every scene humorous somehow.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that kind of story.
Well, you can be that kind of story because Muppets did it.
If you contrast it, we'll get to that because there's a sharp contrast in how the humor's done.
Yeah. But yeah, it was bright. The CGI was pretty bad. It's just not, I mean, you could check it out for yourself, but
you
it
might
wasn't
like
that great. It wasn't that great.
I think it's the worst one I've ever seen.
Now we're going to jump back to 1979. An American Christmas Carol, and that one has Henry Winkler.
The Fonz. And this is, if you never thought Henry Winkler could act, this will change your mind.
He acted in The Waterboy.
Well, no, please. I mean, like dramatic acting.
I know.
This is this is on the top three, like up there with George C. Scott and Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, it really is.
Emoting, real tears, trembling. You know, like when he sees. That's one of the most heartbreaking moments in the movie when it's the Ghost of Christmas Present. And he sees the woman that, she went on and married. She married a pharmacist. This is her here. And he brings her and he's trembling and his eyes well up and he starts crying. And it's like, damn, he's really feeling that.
Yeah.
It's killing him.
Yeah.
But that one is really strongly emoted by the actor. And I believe, the only one that doesn't have a 180 transformation at the end, which makes it more realistic to me. His demeanor does not change. He's still rough, but he doesn't have malice anymore. So he's rough but well-meaning. And it's like, okay, that makes sense because you're not going to go from like, oh, bah humbug to, oh, look at me, I'm light as a feather. It does. I'm as giddy as a drunkard.
Yeah, and in this one, he was an orphan. In the others,
his parents died.
Yeah. His parents died, so he was an orphan. And all the others, Scrooge's father sent him off to boarding school. That's how he got the nephew, and everything. So in this one, he was an orphan, and I like the part where he goes around confiscating people's stuff.
Yeah, he's a repo man.
Yeah, he's going around taking the guy's
He's
stove.
Aaron's furniture.
Yeah, he takes the stove, he takes the radio, he's taking the orphanage piano. I mean, he's taking everything. You're like, golly, dude. And in that one, he fires Bob Cratchit.
That's right.
He fires him.
Because Bob Cratchit comes to him with a proposal from the rock quarry.
Yeah.
And he's scared to death. And he was like, oh, you're conspiring against me after all I've done? You lost your situation. You go on and get out of here.
Yeah.
And what's also I think is interesting is when the orphan kids are going around looking for donations and he gives them pamphlets. He's excited about it too. He means this because he thinks of it in terms of how his upbringing was, where he was like, "Oh man, I just needed some inspiration to get going and to start making money."
Yeah.
So he gives him out these pamphlets on self-improvement, and he's all excited about it and stuff at the very beginning of the film, and it's like, "Oh my god." He means well.
Yeah.
So it's in there. You get a sense of that.
Yeah. Then you got 1988 Scrooged with Bill Murray.
That's E.D. Scrooged.
Yeah, and now of course that's a comedy. If you haven't seen it,
Set in the modern era.
Set in the modern era. It's a comedy. It's good. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's a pretty funny movie. And you get the same concept. You get the ghosts, and they're changing his life and everything. You're going back in the past. It's just set in modern times instead of the 1800s.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, of course, that was Claire was his girl. Mm-hmm. And in the modern era, she was working with the poor, which was in a homeless shelter, which was only been touched on in one other Scrooge film.
Yeah.
That's something that she did. Also, this is when Bill Murray was finally learning how to act, because he was not. I'm sorry, get mad if you want to. Bill Murray was a lousy actor in the beginning. Okay, you may have liked him in Meatballs, you may have liked him in Caddyshack, whatever. He was not a good actor. It took a while, but he got better. Mm-hmm. He got better as time wore on. And it's actually almost kind of a similar concept and transformation as Groundhog Day, when you think about it.
Yeah, Groundhog Day was his absolute best, I think. Now, what about Bob was good too?
Groundhog Day's better.
Yeah. What about Bob is good. Groundhog Day, I think, is up there in the top 10 movies. Mm-hmm. Of all times. Groundhog Day, if you've never seen it, that's a must watch.
Yeah, Groundhog Day is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But Scrooged is fun. Mm-hmm. Putting it as humor. Mm-hmm. It doesn't require you to think.
No.
He really does portray being a bastard.
And he does portray well being miserable.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning,
he's not happy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially like during the beginnings, when they go back to the future, to the past, you can see when he's working in the office, they're having a Christmas party. He's still working. He's not enjoying the party. He's just working. He's just like go, go, go. And then he becomes the president or whatever. And he's just miserable. And I think he portrays that well.
It's still fun to see a comedic contrast.
Yeah.
To the film. That's funny because of the way it's portrayed and not trying to force it like the Kelsey Grammer version.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, look at us, we're being funny. And no, you're not. It's not humorous at all.
Then you got a Muppets Christmas Carol, which I forgot to write down the year that one came out.
But it's also humorous, but only the Muppets are. Mm-hmm. Michael Caine is dead serious.
Yeah, he's crying in that thing.
Wanted to portray it that way, which does make for good comedy. Mm-hmm. You play it serious, and you watch something like Naked Gun or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it funny, is how everybody doesn't seem to notice that something's wrong. And so he ignores the antics of the Muppet characters and their the incidentals of the things that they do or things they say on the sideline are what makes it funny.
Yeah.
But he is dead serious in this film.
Yeah, I like that he didn't break character. He probably did. They probably filmed every scene 10 times. They probably got some great outtakes, yeah. But yeah, he's in there. He's crying. The way they showed him as a kid and growing up and going to work at Fozziwigs and all of that. I think he did a great job. This year was my first time ever seeing it. I never seen it before. But I think it was well done. It really was. Now we're going to 1971 Scrooge. And this one is a musical, unlike Kelsey Grammer.
This one pulls it off.
Yeah. And they got a scene... The ghost of Christmas future takes him, and Scrooge is he doesn't know that it's him that's that died. So the crowd busts out in this song, I Thank You Very Much, because they're all happy that Scrooge is dead, because now all of their debts are canceled. One guy got his black book.
He got the book and destroyed it, and so now they can't prove anyone owes anything.
Yeah.
It's like,
and they're all singing, I Thank You Very Much, and they're dancing, and Scrooge is dancing, and he's all happy.
He thinks he did something nice.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, they're all happy. I did something. And meanwhile, the casket is passing by behind him.
Yeah, he doesn't see the casket because he turned around to address the crowd. It's a good movie. The guy that plays Scrooge, he did a good job. Like we said, it is a musical, but it's not bad. They don't sing that much.
Yeah.
But it
and
is.
the singing is in the right placement. Again, it emphasizes the story. It doesn't try to tell the story.
Yeah. And then they had a good scene where he went to Fred's house, and Fred is playing a game, and he's trying to interject the correct answers, but of course nobody can hear him. But that was a good scene. It was just a well done movie, I thought. I like
and Alec Guinness is aka Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh yeah, that too.
Is Marley and gets the most airtime of any Marley in any film because he comes back at the end, and there's a scene, and I actually have it up on the channel. It's Scrooge Goes to Hell, because he does. It's not done in any other film.
No.
And when this was transferred from theaters to television, when they aired it on TV, they would always cut this scene. And it's basically Marley comes back, Alec Guinness gives him a tour and shows him his office. And it's like, oh, you've got a job. I'll take you to your office. It's fun. It's a really fun and well done scene.
It is, because he falls, and it's like he's falling forever.
Yeah.
And then it makes you think of Dante's Inferno and the seven chambers of hell, because he's just falling until he gets to the bottom. So yeah, that one is well done. I recommend you watch that one. The next one, we're going to jump back to 1949, A Christmas Carol, and this one has Vincent Price.
And Vincent Price is narrating, and this is like a made-for-television spot. And
30 minutes, well, 25 minutes.
A live production, and you can catch people almost flubbing lines in it.
Yeah, and you can see, because it feels rushed. I mean, it's only 25 minutes. It feels rushed.
Yeah.
I mean, they just whip right through it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, we got Vincent Price, just use him for something.
Yeah. And his narration is very good.
Yeah, he does narrate well.
If you're a Vincent Price fan and you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out just to see the narration. The rest of it, quite frankly, isn't that great.
No, it's not. But we watched it because it said Vincent Price.
Yeah, that's about it.
I thought Vincent Price was gonna be Scrooge.
I bet you he would have done a good job.
Yeah, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. The next one is Ebenezer. It came out in 1998, and that one has Jack Palance. And it's actually a Western.
It's weird. It is a Western.
It's a full-blown Western.
And it has, if you can get past it, a lot of cowboy movie cliches.
Yeah.
It can almost wear your nerves, the cliches, the card games, the bar fight kind of thing that they do.
Shootout.
The
duel.
The duel.
That's what it's called. Duel.
But of course, if you are a Jack Palance fan or you know anything about his acting, he is so over the freaking top on everything that he does. It makes it fun. Yeah, because he's so good.
All in all, this would be a bad movie. It really was.
It looks like a made-for-TV production. Yeah, by the way,
and it is a bad movie. But Jack Palance played Ebenezer Scrooge. He really did. So he's in whatever town they're in, and he plays. He owns the saloon which Marley owned, and told him to give it to the daughter. He cheated the daughter. He's cheating everybody out of their land. He's trying to own the whole town. He cheats this guy, the guy from Silver Spoons, out of his land in a card game, because he has it rigged where he wins every time. And
So yeah, a lot of Western cliches in there.
yeah.
But it's
And-
Jack Palance.
Yeah. And in this one, he's in boarding school and his dad takes him out and he never knew why. He thought his dad was just being mean.
Yeah, they switched this part.
Yeah. The dad made some bad investments and lost all the money and couldn't afford to send him to school anymore. So
Because he loved it.
yeah,
he
he
was
enjoyed it. So when they went back to the past, he overheard the conversation Dad was having with Mom, and Dad was heartbroken because he had to pull his son out of school, and he knew the kid liked school, so he blamed his dad all the time for ruining his dreams and all of that.
Never realized
Yeah.
what actually happened.
And in this one, he was married and had a kid, but he neglected his wife for money. And the wife left him, took the kid and left him, went married another guy. And then in Christmas Present, he actually dies during Christmas Present. You remember when they were fighting and he fell over the balcony?
Yeah, he saw himself die.
Yeah,
He didn't see a grave. He saw himself actually die.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like how the Street Fighter movie with Van Damme, terrible film, but worth watching it to see Raul Julia be just crazy over the top with his acting. It's the same thing. Jack Palance is stellar in everything he does.
Yeah.
He takes it very seriously.
Yeah. Then the last one we saw was 1951 Scrooge. And this one has Alistair Sim. We watched it on YouTube. And the audio quality was a little tinny.
Yeah,
but it wasn't so
not
bad
restored.
you can't watch it. But the video quality was great. And I think it's streaming on Tubi. So if you watch it on Tubi, maybe the audio is better. This one was pretty good. I liked it.
He does a good job emoting too, and really good facial expressions.
Yeah.
And I had neglected to mention the one thing that I noticed also with the musical version. That guy looked more terrified in some of the scenes than any Scrooge we've seen. Like he was about to wet his pants. He did such a great job of looking scared to death in some of those scenes. I just wanted to point that out. It was hilarious. But this guy did a good job of looking scared too.
Yeah. Yeah, and just looking miserable and mean and angry. This guy looked angry.
He did.
And he
looked like people would be afraid to talk to him.
Yeah. And in this one, they showed more behind the scenes. Okay, after he went back home. But no, he never went back home. He went straight to, I don't remember, but he was working with Fozzie. His sister was pregnant. His sister died during childbirth. They showed the scene where he was there when the sister died. And she was trying to tell him, hey, make sure you take care of my son. But he left the room before she was able to say that. So then, of course, the spirit showed the whole thing where she was like, Ebenezer.
The party
please,
missed when he walked out.
Yeah, please take care of my son. And he was like, oh, I never knew. I didn't hear you.
And he felt bad. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. I did not know.
Yeah. And then they showed the girlfriend. The girlfriend was working at the homeless shelter, feeding people.
And that's in the present. Another part that was interesting also was they emphasized on how he ripped off Fezziwig.
Yeah.
He ripped him off because he left Fezziwig for another position. And that that money lender, that bank, foreclosed Fezziwig's, and he was in on it.
Yeah.
And some of that emphasis was demonstrated.
They also touched on that in American Christmas Carol with Henry Winkler.
That's true.
Also in this one, not only did he rip off Fezziwig, but the guy he was working for went bankrupt. So then they're all at the table with the investors, and they were like, you're bankrupt. What are you going to do now? And Scrooge and Marley comes up with a plan. We're going to pay off all the debt and then buy out the company. and they're like, oh no, you can't do that, because they know that they're going to be hard. So, but that was pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, there's some interesting nuances to the story that are touched on in that version that you don't see anywhere else.
Yeah, but watching the different versions again, you understand a somewhat why Scrooge is the way he is, because again, what happened with his dad, he lost his sister, he lost his girlfriend, all of that, he just built up this hard, callous heart, and wouldn't allow anybody to come in and help soften him up and, give him a nice big hug. But something I thought about watching this, and not trying to get all super religious, but is a story in the Bible of Lazarus, when Lazarus died and he was in hell and he was hot, and he looked up and he saw Abraham, Father Abraham, and he asked Abraham to give him some water. And Abraham was like, no. And he was like, can I go back and warn my brothers? And he was like, no, they got the prophets and everything. And Scrooge is given that opportunity. Marley comes back to warn him. And it's just, is he going to heed the warning? Everybody doesn't have that opportunity, but in the movie, they show that he has the opportunity to fix his wrongs. And, of course, because it's a movie or it's a book written in the 1800s, he does.
Yeah. And those are the ones that we poured over. So,
yeah.
Like I said, some are better than others.
Yeah.
If I was going to, I would say absolutely stay away from the Kelsey Grammer one. It was absolutely dismal. Jack Palance, if you're a Jack Palance fan, is worth checking out.
Yeah.
Scrooge, the 1951 version, was well done.
Yeah, it was
very well done, and tells a lot more of the story than several of the other ones. Mickey's Christmas Carol, because it's still classic Disney.
Yeah. When
Disney was still good. George C. Scott's version.
Yes.
Well acted, as well as the
Patrick Stewart.
The Patrick Stewart version and the Henry Winkler version. All of those are very, very well acted. And the 71 musical is just fun. If you're into musicals, that one is done properly, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun to watch, especially the thank you very much scene. That scene.
Because it occurs twice in two different contrasts, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, of course, later on, Scrooge thinks that must be it again. But it wasn't the same. But that, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just kind of cool the way that they transitioned that. So and if again, for comedy, the Bill Murray version's pretty decent, as is the Muppets Christmas Carol.
That one was good.
Yeah, the Muppets Christmas Carol.
I like that one.
Back when Muppets knew how to tell the story, because they've gotten pretty wonky in recent years too, unfortunately.
Yeah, what can you do?
So there you are. Have you seen any of those?
Yeah.
Is there another one that you have seen that we didn't talk about that you would recommend?
Yeah, because there's still a lot out there that we haven't seen, animated and live action.
Yes.
But these are the ones we saw, and we wanted to share it with you.
Sure. So if you have any thoughts, you can tell us about it in the comments section down below. Please do. Give the video a thumbs up. We hope you got something out of it. Share it if you can. Subscribe if you're new. All of that good stuff. And if that is it, then what more can we say? But thanks for watching. And we will see you again soon.